Hey everyone, it's Reel Filmmaking, and today we're talking about short films. Now, I love short films, I love narrative filmmaking. It's why I got into doing the movies and videos and YouTube and filmmaking and all that stuff. I just love telling a good story, seeing characters come to life. And so today I wanted to drop a couple tips on you if you're looking at making a short film or you're just trying to come up with short film ideas. These are just tips in the general process of making a short film. Now, the biggest thing you have to do when you're making a short film, whether it's your first film or your 15th film, is you have to put it through the lens of resource filmmaking. And what do I mean by resource filmmaking? Essentially, it's just using what you got. So to break resource filmmaking down a little bit more, you have to look at what do I have, like gear, accessories, cameras, all that stuff. Who do I have? So, talent, actors, friends, and then where do I have? What locations are you able to get into without any hassle or dealing with people? Or if you can't get into places that have people, how do you factor that in? Those are all things that you need to consider when you are crafting a short film idea. You may have some awesome idea of where there's an awesome highway chase and it's intense, and then you end up in this airport hangar and there's an awesome shootout and all this stuff. But the reality is 99% of us, me included, will probably never have access to any of that stuff or means to make that happen. And so while that's a cool idea, it's not realistic, and you gotta come back to reality and be like, okay, what can I pull off and what can I pull off well? And so again, this is where resource filmmaking finds its home in our lives. So what do I have access to? I can't do this awesome highway car chase scene, but maybe I have a friend who he collects classic cars. Maybe I can ask him, hey, can I feature one of your cars in my short film? And you write an idea around classic cars and maybe a character is obsessed with them. Or you're thinking about characters, you're thinking about actors. Who do you have access to? So maybe you have some friends who are really into acting and they want to jump in and help you with short films. That would be great. But let's say maybe you don't. But maybe you have, a lot of friends who are supportive of you. Maybe you can put them into your short film and you can kind of write around who they are and make them be believable characters. We'll talk more about that in a minute. Or maybe you're thinking about locations and you're like, all the stories that I want to tell happen in these crazy locations. Maybe think about where do you have access to? You have access to your house. Maybe you have a friend who has a big farm. Maybe you can think through a story that you could write there. There's a lot of different things when you're thinking through the lens of resource filmmaking that at first they can kind of seem limiting, but then as you start to think about what can I do? What could I do? Who do I have access to? I think it really does spark creativity. So an example of this in my own filmmaking, I recently, I guess not so recently, kind of recently, in this year, so it's still recently, my short film Moving On, I released it a couple months ago, but that was honestly a film that came out of the process of resource filmmaking. Originally, I had written this whole other script. It was kind of neo-noir, detective inspired, and it's gonna have multiple locations, and I was like, this is gonna be so cool, and I got through with the, penning the first draft of it, and then just stepping back and thinking, I don't have the resources, again, putting it through that resource filmmaking. I was like, I'm gonna need these multiple locations that I don't have. I'm gonna need more people than I have access to, all these different things. So because of that, I had to step back and I came up with this idea for Moving On, looking at who I had access to, what I had access to, this one location primarily. And it's how can I make this work? And in the end, I made something that I was really proud of because of resource filmmaking. So resource filmmaking is kind of the umbrella that covers this whole thing when you're making short films. The next tip I have when you are working on short films is to keep it very focused to one idea. Filmmakers, we're creatives, it can be really exciting. It's you get the camera rolling, you get all the juices flowing, you're like, what can we do, all this stuff? And you want to make this thing that maybe has multiple different story arcs, and these characters can have all this backstory and exposition, and they could be linked in this way and do all this stuff. One of the things about a short film is it's short, so you have a limited runtime to convey a message or an idea. And so because of that, I really encourage new filmmakers, people who are working on maybe their first short film, to really stay focused in on one idea or one theme. Really, what should be happening in your short film is there should be one character trying to achieve one goal, and that should be it. And a lot of people can look at that, they can hear me talk about short films, and they can feel oh, that's such a weakness. It just sucks that I can't tell a bigger story. But honestly, I think being able to tell a really succinct story that kind of packs a punch and just hits you in a really effective manner, that is a strength for the short film. And if you can pull that off well, I think that can be just as powerful as a 90-minute like feature film. Rolling right off of that, like I kind of already alluded to, it's like we're making a short film, we're not making a feature film. I feel like a lot of short films that I have seen kind of run into this issue of trying to be a feature film. We're gonna try to up the production value, and we're gonna try to do all these things, and we're gonna try and incorporate all these different things. It starts to become very overblown, and they kind of forget they're in the realm of making a short film. So again, really focus on doing all the things you're doing and telling the singular story well. You have to commit to that, because if you try to do all this other stuff that feels disjointed and is trying to be a feature film, and it starts to fall apart. And my last tip for short films is to really focus on the characters. Whether you're doing a short film, a documentary, a narrative feature, regardless, I think characters are really what connect an audience to a film. In a short film, even though you have a limited runtime and it's a smaller window, writing really good characters is super important. You want characters that people can connect to. You want them to feel real. You don't want them just to feel like, oh, this character represents like happiness or sadness or whatever. Make your characters multifaceted. Take the time to really invest into these characters. And I know that can be difficult sometimes because maybe you're working with non-actors, you have limited resources. I get all of that stuff. Make your best effort to make the characters feel relatable, to feel like real people. I think that does wonders for making a project come to life. And you know, there's so many other factors that do that too, but I think having a good story and good characters that people feel connected to really helps. It's like we want characters that they have highs and lows, they have wins and they have losses. They're not perfect people because we're not perfect people. They struggle with things that we struggle with. Those are all going to be things that help your short film connect to your audience. Because of that, I would say really spend a lot of time as you're developing your short film idea to really focus on like, how can I make this character believable? So those are some tips I have for making short film. Like I said, whether it's your first one or your 15th one, I'd love to hear any advice or knowledge you've learned from making short films. If you found this video helpful, make sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to Reel Filmmaking for more content about filmmaking, cameras, creative process, all that stuff coming on a weekly basis. And until next time, keep making movies and watching movies, and I'll see you on Reel Filmmaking. It's about time I made another short film. I gotta get something cooking.